This is the Cameron Journal Podcast. It's a place where we talk about important things. It's a place where we bring a little slice of the news to you. It's a place where we do important things, have important conversations. It's also things that I like to talk about. My name is Cameron Cowan, and this is the Cameron Journal Podcast. Today on the Cameron Journal Podcast, we are joined by Emmy Vine, that's my phone, who is the author of this really interesting book called Something Sacred I Lost. And it is about a male protagonist who struggles from a history of being sexually abused and the challenges they face in the healing process. I was immediately interested in this book because my first novel had this theme in it, as well, as people who've read it know. And this is an under talked about subject in life and in literature and all this sort of thing. So I thought it was important to highlight and talk about as someone who's written about that. So let's welcome author Emmy Vine to the Cameron Journal Podcast. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Now, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired you to write it from the start?
I can do that. But first of all, I didn't know that you had a book that was about male sexual abuse. That's interesting.
Well,
I should
it
definitely
is
check that out.
it is in a manner of speaking. In a fourth of the book is in four parts, and part of the book is about the character struggling with his sexuality, and he ends up kind of working as a gay male prostitute and gets taken advantage of several times and gets exposed to HIV/AIDS and all this type of thing. And so it's something that isn't talked about a lot, but it does happen. And so in my book, especially with the element of drugs and drug dealing and all that type of thing, I wanted to bring in that element of it because I've heard too many stories of guys in that situation.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah, the whole gay when high or gay for pay is a little bit more common than I think people would think. And that also, even when it's between two dudes, can be a very dangerous situation. One of the populations most affected by rape and sexual assault are gay men.
Yeah,
So
that's not surprising, actually.
no, it really isn't. And so so it's so that's something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. So when I saw the presser for your book come across, I was immediately interested.
Okay, yeah, it's a little unusual because most females, I guess, don't write from the point of view of a male. So people are definitely surprised, when I was first discussing this idea with it. But it's kind of weird how it got its start. And
Mm.
I didn't set out with an intention to write about male sexual abuse. I had the intention to write Damien's story. So I was in high school, actually, when I started writing this book in a completely different form, but my main character was the same. Now he's evolved over the years. I never finished it, but it was called Something Sacred I Lost. I was 16 years old writing this story about abused orphans. I had no idea why, but it kind of just called to me. And then life got in the way and I never finished. And, a couple decades later, I sat down to write the story because he never left me. And it's like he had a story to tell. And I was finally able to do it. And I was hoping my goal would be that this definitely opens up that conversation because it is definitely a subject that's really not spoken about nearly enough.
No, my first novel went through a similar course. It was based on a story that someone told me when I was 19 years old. Um, and I didn't publish that book till 2020.
Oh,
So
oh
that
wow.
was took 13 years to get that book into the world. Um,
So I beat you.
and
Mine was a lot longer.
yeah, it was it was but I that feeling you say, like, it just kind of stayed with you. That story about him and that whole, some way to tell that just kind of never left.
Okay,
And
interesting.
yeah, and when I was working at this magazine, that business collapsed. I was writing to kind of process what had happened. And I discovered that I had this sort of more mature fiction voice, and I started writing on that project again. And then it finally in 2020 we released it to the world. So,
Did it
and
flow?
uh not really. Um, it was a lot of stops and starts and figuring out a new outline and a way to tell things and how things were going to go down. Sometimes I had a scene idea but needed to surround stuff with it. Lots of stuff, lots of stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
um, and it was a little bit short, so I kind of had to stuff some filler to get it up to novel length because I'm a very efficient writer. I tend not to waste a lot on words. And so a couple of the reviews that I've gotten of people saying it seems to have some filler in it. Well, yeah, it only came in at about 41,000 words and it needed about another 10,000. So, yes, there
Uh-huh.
were some additives, additives in production.
That's really funny. Okay. You
Yeah,
got to do what
yeah.
works.
Yeah, so it's why don't you give us a little basic outline of the plot? What's the basic story here?
So, Damien is a horse trainer and he's finally setting off on his own. He starts working for this man who builds a horse stable on his property for his daughter, Lila. Um, and, they're a very wealthy family living in Greenwich. And we don't know much about Damien. He's a very mysterious character. But, when Lila meets him, she likes him immediately. He's a very good looking guy. And they kind of get along in the beginning. They hit it off. But right away he closes off and she doesn't know why. And then things start to happen that show her that he had a difficult background. And as the story progresses, if ultimately it's a story of healing. So the love story is a large part of it, but it's not the main part of it. The main part is how he gets to a place where um, he can choose to heal. Because I believe that healing is ultimately a choice. Not everyone's ready for it, and not every time is the right time to do it. You have to be open to it. Um, so he ends up getting to a place where people start discovering his secrets in a whole series of events. He's kind of spent his entire life hiding, not wanting anyone to know about him. So he's become a master of disguise. So it delves into themes of what people see, who we really are, um, choosing to heal, about making choices. What's our responsibility? What isn't our responsibility? Because he doesn't want to choose healing because he will fight it with everything he has because he's spent so long suffering in this and believing everything was his fault. So how can he just let that go? But and then he has a brother that comes into the story, and then there's something happens that I can't spoil it, but there's definitely a,
Oh,
a
that's
catalyst for
good.
change. Um,
Yes, yes.
his trauma is kind of brought up all over again. So at heart, it's really a heartwarming story, but it does get pretty graphic. I don't shy away from any of the details. So it can make people uncomfortable, but it's a heavy topic, but it moves quickly. It's not intended to be a heavy book, so it has an easy pace, um, and it's not pretentiously done. It's very accessible. if that makes
I like
sense.
that. No, no, I like that. The inciting incident in my novel is my main character who later goes on to have all these sexual adventures um is ends up in jail for killing his stepfather with a cast iron frying pan for molesting his sister.
Nice. I like the cast iron frying pan.
Yes, and hence the title Cast Iron, a novel. And
Ah, okay.
yes, and the way I shot the cover myself and the way I have it, it looks like the frying pan's coming for you. My mother complained. She's like, every time I pick up this book, I feel like the pan is coming for me. I'm like, well, that's kind of a big part of the plot, mom. So that's kind of how that works. That's called good marketing. Like,
Yes, yes.
and
So my cover is not a frying pan, but it's the eyes. I actually painted those eyes, so it's nice to be part of the cover.
yeah, I was going to ask you about that if that was where you got the art from, but yourself. That's I love a
So
DIY.
but working with oh, thank you, working with my art teacher. So she kind of did the background, and it was really her
Nice.
idea and her vision, but I guess it was a joint product.
No, no, that's tremendous. That's great. I mean, it's just people. This is the kind of the one of the things I love about indie authors is you get to it's not the cover was done by a faceless marketing department in a skyscraper in New York. Like we're much more involved in it.
Absolutely,
And so you get to hear the great stories of how a certain element of a book came to be. So
absolutely. And
yeah,
also,
no,
we love our characters. We love them, and it's
yeah.
like, no, no, I want the best for them. I'm not going to just have some nameless marketing agency create something that doesn't really speak to me. Because they have to be properly represented.
Yeah, it's that is very, and I think also, like I said, it's also a big part of the marketing. Like, especially on Amazon now, when people are scrolling by, like you really have to, or even any site, Barnes and Noble, because I'm on all of them. I'm on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Waterstones in the UK, all of the places. Like when people are scrolling by on their phones, you gotta grab their attention. So,
Yeah,
um, it's
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
No, I was very drawn to that. But I mean, I appreciate the make taking a heavy topic but making it accessible. A lot of my close friends who'd watched me work on this project were very concerned how I was going to handle my inciting incident, and I said as delicately as possible, and I did it in a single paragraph.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Okay, you are very concise.
Yes, and it was enough to give you the idea of what was going on without exactly telling you. Anybody who knows will know. And then we move on. We move on quickly, and and people and I think that's a really interesting way of dealing with things without necessarily dealing with those things. So I appreciate I appreciate that for
Oh, so
certain.
I kind of deal with those things. I do get pretty graphic.
Yes, yes. I remember you saying that. I was going to say, other projects I've done differently. I just finished my MFA at Goddard College, and in my thesis project, I wrote an entire book about. It's basically Downton Abbey set in the antebellum South, and in that book, I very much go there. Like we get
Okay.
much more explicit. I mean, I'm a
Well,
big fan of.
congratulations to you. That's exciting.
Oh, thank you. I'm a big fan of the implied, the fade to black, but that's not appropriate for every project.
Yeah.
And I can totally see why in this project, if you're really trying to highlight that aspect of it, why you'd want to go there. Was that hard
So,
for you? It's hard for me. It's really
so it
I
actually
like
wasn't.
I'll not lie. Like if I have to write a scene about, like some of the lesser fun parts of slavery, I need a little drinky. That's when the whiskey comes out. Be like, oh, gotta write a slave flogging, need whiskey, like sort of like, is it
so,
hard for you or how do you
so
handle it?
I have to say, I definitely apologized to Damien, my main character. I said, I'm going to be putting you in cuffs now. I'm really sorry, but it's for your own good. You're going to get there. It's going to help you get to a better place, you know? So I definitely felt bad about it. But no, it wasn't hard writing it. I kind of wrote it like trying to like picture myself. Like, I don't know. I guess I went in his mind. to really get those feelings. And I did a lot of research. But no, I wanted it to be, I wanted people to know because I think people really have trouble with the idea that um, men can be raped.
Mm.
I think people argue against that all the time. So I really wanted to make it graphic.
The police won't
I
even
wanted,
believe you.
but
Like the police won't even believe men. Like if a man reports it, the police just be kind of like, "That's funny, dude," and move along. Like it's
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
not to give much away, but there is an incident with a woman as well. So, definitely he's raped by a man, but like there is something. So, and that really people don't believe.
Yes. Yeah. No, you get yeah, you get no yeah, you get nothing. You get nothing.
So I
Absolutely. No,
really wanted to make things, clear.
no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I do like that interaction between I I love when people talk about their characters as if they're people. I don't have that relationship with my writing, but I love people that do. I think it's so fascinating. So I appreciate that.
So
I
it's
think that's
funny because
great.
I don't consider myself a writer. This is the first like I wrote in high school and then I really kind of stopped. Like I wrote this book and I've had people say, "Well, when are you having your next?" I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm done. I'm a one-hit wonder. Well, let's hope I get there. But I'm not an author that's just going to be writing a ton of books. I had this particular story to tell. He was part of me, and I would go to sleep at night like the scene would write itself. I would have these conversations. And I actually had a character who kind of decided that she wanted to be a bigger part of the story. She was never supposed to be there. And she kind of appeared and like wrote herself, which is really a cool experience when you really get involved with that.
No, certainly. I mean, that is it is always I don't think people realize in the progress of a project there is a huge sort of up and down of where things go. There's uncertainty at one point. There's the point at which the book kind of starts to take on a life of its own.
Yeah.
Um and there's also sometimes whole storylines that get cut. In the original version of Cast Iron, there was going to be a police detective who was looking for him. Um,
What happened?
because well, the storyline just didn't work, and it didn't see. I wanted to be more focused, so that storyline got gotten rid of
Okay.
in favor of focusing more closely on the main plot. So I mean, but that
Yeah.
happens in books.
Yeah.
Sometimes the thing that you don't think is going to be very significant ends up being a lot bigger than you think it is, and the things that you think are that vital and most important are some of the things that you actually can live without. So
Yeah. Yes.
but yeah, I did, but it's interesting you kind of think of yourself as a one book go. Like so like there's you don't think there's any other stories to tell. Like now that you've done this, you're good.
So I guess, there's always a chance and maybe some story will take me the way that this one did. But I'm not going to force that.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. That's all right. That's I mean that was worked for Harper Lee, so that's but
She did
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it was whatever. So, when it comes to your writing process, I know it took place over a long period of time and all this type of thing, but when you're really doing it and really working on it, what does your process look like?
So once I sat down and I made myself an outline,
Yep.
I gave myself a year and I said, I want to be finished with my first, with my first draft in a year. And I did. I actually succeeded. I was like a couple months shy of my deadline, a couple of weeks shy of my deadline. It was very exciting. But I just went forward. Somebody gave me great advice. Like, just don't read it. You're going to just want to edit it. So I didn't read it. I didn't read it once. And I kept, people would read different parts of it for me. And I'm like, I don't even remember what happened there. I just, I would have to go back and say, wait, what was that person's name again? Because I hadn't read it. Um, I didn't want to do it because then I felt I would get stuck. So yeah, definitely certain things changed. And when I edited it, I needed to go back and enhance the first part of it to match the second. Um, but I kind of just went straight through, and that was great.
No, that is really good. Yeah, I always am interested to find out if people are outliners or if they're pantsers or how, successful, either method is. I'm kind of a little hybrid of both. I give myself enough structure to allow myself to be creative.
Okay.
And so I'm always interested in that whole process. Are you a are do you write out by hand or type? What do you do?
Oh, I'm a typer. I have this weird thing with my hands. I'm a righty, but I write like a lefty. So my writing has always been a little painstaking. I've always been a better typer than a writer.
Yeah, I no, I was a write by longhand for years and years. And
Hence,
yeah, kind of over a couple years moved into a more digital process just because it was faster. Um,
yeah,
although I do know a guy, here's his process. He writes by hand, writes by typewriter, and then finally puts it in his laptop.
a typewriter. Okay,
Yes.
I'm
He
I'm
goes
curious to know
from
why a typewriter.
well, and I do miss this aspect of it. Every time you move writing from one format to another, it ends up being a revision because you change stuff. So
Yes.
basically what he does is the longhand is the kind of the rough draft, the typewriter is kind of the first good draft, and by the time it gets to digital, he's already on the second draft. So by the time it gets
Okay.
to digital, it's already in good shape.
Okay.
Um, I I tend to just type it directly in, and then I will print out and revise. I do revise the old-fashioned way. I print the whole thing out on paper, get out my pen, and start making notes. Um,
Okay. Wow.
yeah, that's one of
Yeah,
that
you
that's
have to be able to
that's a
visualize
vestige.
that.
Yeah, that's kind of a vestige of the old system. Like I need to hold it and experience it in that way, and I need to kind of see it how it goes on the page and all this type of thing and and kind of have that experience. So yeah, which is a bit odd, but yeah, no,
I
that's
don't think
that's
so. You can
cool.
highlight things, you can underline, you can make arrows. This goes
Yeah,
here, this goes
and
there.
way faster than trying to do those things in a word processor or anything like that. Like I
Okay.
can just, do quickly this type of thing without having to constantly go and find and change the tool and blah blah blah. Like I just want to be able to just do it.
Yeah,
So,
I hear that.
yes. So, yeah, so how has your self-publishing journey been? Like how, have you enjoyed it? Has it been painstaking? Has it been harder than the writing part? How's that been for you?
Oh, I'm not enjoying it. I
That's
I
okay. Let me be that's very valid. That's
Yeah, thank
okay
you.
to not enjoy it.
You know, I I'm not very good at marketing myself. And I'm a photographer too. And again, I'm just not good at marketing myself. So I speak to people like, really? You are? Yeah, I just don't talk about it. Um, so I wrote it. Then I had to figure out what was next. I was like, I don't want to do all this research. So I had to do some research. Then I had to write the stupid query. Oh my, that was an experience. And obviously, I'm not going to be picked up because there's hundreds of thousands of queries daily to all these agents, and why would they pick up mine? Then I had to figure out, I don't know, an Instagram account. I don't want to deal with that. I just don't want to. So if you look at my Instagram account, I think I may have like 3 followers. I'm just not going to do anything about it. Um, so I finally just did it on Amazon because it was easy, and that's it. I'm only on Amazon because
Yeah.
I don't have the patience for it.
No, I think that's probably the part of writing that people struggle with the most is the business.
Yeah.
Definitely. Um, that is ironically the part I I find it very tedious, but because I worked in marketing, I don't mind it. I kind of like it.
So maybe
A
you can
little
give me some
bit.
pointers.
Yeah, I'm was thinking about this because I'm working on a new online course that's a very soup to nuts. It's called The Power of Story, and it's basically from idea to sales all the way
Oh,
through the entire process. And
that sounds great.
yes, it was my teaching practicum for grad school, and I'm doing a fiction and a nonfiction track. And so
Wow.
launching that here in the next couple months. Yeah, social media is good. You also, getting reviews on Goodreads is good, and there are some services for that. I've gotten a lot of help from getting reviews on Goodreads and all that sort of thing. So there's kind of multiple things you can do with all that, and I mean, but social media is kind of your best is kind of your best bet. Um, Twitter more so than Instagram. Um,
I don't even know how to use Twitter. I
yeah,
don't
I
have the
mean it's
patience.
yeah, I mean, Twitter is cool because writers are people who work with words, and Twitter is the social media platform that most employs words. So you find a lot of writing people over on Twitter. So that can always be a good way to find some community because the writing community is huge. Find some community, connect with people, and also, interest readers in what you've put out there because there is a market for pretty much everything. It may not be a wide and deep market. It may not be an incredibly profitable market, but there is one there. So it just depends on if it's worth going after for you. So,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
really, social media is kind of your best bet. But the other one that I would do is I would try to get some reviews because those really do help.
On Goodreads.
Yes.
You pay
Or
people to
even
review it?
Yeah, so they have these little review services, and you can ask people to do it on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever you can. There's things to do for that. So, yeah, those are good ways to kind of market without marketing, as it were.
Okay. Thank you. I will check that out.
Yeah, so that's no, but it's good. I think for to say that I think because a lot of indie writers listen to this, and I think for someone to say, yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I think your experience is the most common experience. Most people aren't interested in selling themselves. That's the part about this business they like the least,
Right.
and it's good for someone to shout it out because that's real. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, do people like pretend to like the
Oh,
process?
I mean, I think some people view it. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of authors on this podcast. I think a lot of people sort of go not so much pretend, they view it as a necessary evil sort of
Okay.
thing. Do they like it? No. Do they realize it's necessity? Yes.
Okay.
So,
So they're just not
um,
outspoken the way I am about how awful it is.
no, no, not necessarily. No, but that's okay because I like to reflect multiple experiences. For
Yeah.
me, I like attention. I like talking to people. So I find that
Oh, don't get
process
me wrong.
rather
I love talking to
easy.
people. I love connecting to people. I just don't know how to do it in marketing. I'll go up to a bar and talk to total strangers. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Um, it's more the digital world. I feel like it's hard to connect with people online.
It is. It definitely can be. I mean, although I have met very interesting people I would have never met under any other circumstances, it definitely is. It definitely is. And it's also hard to balance, once you've written it, that's such a huge lift. And then edit it, revised it, got a book, got it out there. That's all such a huge lift. And then you've got to turn right around and go sell the thing. And
Right.
that's its own huge lift. That's the one nice thing about traditional publishing is there's a good, 12 to 16-month lag before you have to go out and sell it. So there's some time to recover.
Yeah, I
Whereas
just
in
want somebody to
indie
tell me what to do.
publishing, one kind of follows follows the other. So, well,
Yeah.
if I were you, I would start a Twitter account. I would look up hashtag writing community and see what happens.
Okay. That's exciting. I definitely will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and yes, and I because there's a lot of great people who are in a similar situation with you. They maybe written one book, they're still working on it. They're only on Amazon. This is like you could. There's a lot of community there, and I think if you started scanning through, you'd find people that you could dial in with.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Well, this is the part of the interview where we normally ask people to do plugs, but we've talked at length about how not online you are. So perhaps we'll skip that and we'll just mention to people
Well, I do
that,
have a website. Does that
oh,
count?
good. Yes, it does. Tell us about the website. Yes.
Well, it's a website. It has words on it. There's a link. Why don't you say tell me about the website? What does that mean exactly?
Well, tell us what the address is so people can visit you.
Oh, okay. It's emmyvine.com.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you want to keep in touch with Emmy, just go visit her website. The book is on Amazon. It's called Something Sacred I Lost by Emmy Vine. And thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter. And we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast.